My name is Vai Wakai. I'm the daughter of the late John and Della Wakai. I'm calling in from Anchorage on the unceded territories of the Dena'ina people. I am from Sivunga, located on Sivokak, also known as St. Lawrence Island. I am the youngest of 6 siblings. I have been in Anchorage since October 1991. I'm a mother of 4 sons, and my husband and sons, we all live here in Anchorage, but majority of the work I do is with our leadership in communities on Protecting Future Generations project. And I have been with Alaska Community Action on Toxics 18 years, and we have had a community-based project on Sivokak since 2000, addressing our concerns due to military toxics that were abandoned and buried after the Cold War. We have 2 formerly used defense sites, and I'm a Native Village Sivunga tribal citizen and a environmental health and justice program director. And I do this work because I'm a mother and grandmother.
And I'm Pam Miller, the Executive Director with Alaska Community Action on Toxics. And I helped found the organization in 1997 in response to the many communities around Alaska who have been affected by military contamination. And we have over 700 formerly used defense sites here in Alaska, as well as the industrial contamination from military, mining, and oil and gas operations. And Alaska has been a resource colony also for oil and gas and mining. So we've worked to stand with and assist, advocate for, and do community-based research with communities around Alaska faced with these environmental health and justice issues. And we are an environmental health and justice organization that does community-based participatory research. We work to change policy so that policy is protective of our health and the environment for everyone, including the most vulnerable people. And we work from a local to international level because of our place in the North and in the Arctic, where chemical pollutants from all over the hemisphere move into this area on wind and ocean currents and accumulate in the bodies of fish, wildlife, and people, which is really the ultimate injustice, that in many cases we're far from the production facilities of these major chemicals, but they all end up in the Arctic. I think for me, what coming clean means is just great solidarity, great sharing of information, working in concert with groups that share the same spirit and interest in holding the chemical industry accountable and working to that end and ending the production and use of chemicals that we know are very harmful to our communities and our health and well-being. And one highlight that I remember is in 2009 when we brought a delegation of leaders from Sivokak, St. Lawrence Island, to Washington, D.C., and Coming Clean really helped us organize, help with lodging, helped create some meeting spaces where the Yupik leaders from the island could share their stories and get that information out to agencies and members of Congress.
I began this work in October 2002, and with no experience or background in this field, but took the position I was offered as assistant coordinator. And it was very personal to me because I mentioned the 2 formerly used defense sites on our island. And this has resulted in health disparities never seen before in our people. And I had to challenge myself to learn as much as I can, because you know, it's been very difficult to hold the military accountable. And the contaminants that they buried and abandoned is resulting in as I mentioned, health disparities never seen before, including a cancer crisis. And my parents and siblings, we were a family of 8. Both my parents had cancer. My eldest brother got cancer. And even though he and I'm also a cancer survivor, even though he and I are both been cancer free, there needs to be systemic wide change as far as whether it's holding polluters accountable, including the military, but multinational corporations that produce over 100,000 chemicals. To me, that's so unethical, because we come from humble beginnings, living off the land and ocean like we have for many generations. And my people feel the military turn their back on us. But it's organizations like Coming Clean that ACAT has, we're part of these coalitions that help get our story out. There's been many opportunities to be interviewed, to share our story. Most people have no idea that the military is one of the largest polluters on the planet, and that the Arctic has become a hemispheric sink for these persistent organic pollutants, or POPs, contaminants. I had no idea. We can't see, smell, or taste PCBs, but we're finding them 4 to 10 times higher in the blood of my people. We are some of the most highly contaminated population on the planet. And Coming Clean, they've given us opportunities to do some research, but also under the umbrella of the Environmental Justice Health Alliance. I joined the monthly calls. It's an opportunity to hear about other work that people are doing throughout the nation, communities like mine on the ground, working to make meaningful change, to protect the health and well-being of their families, their bodies, and communities. There's communities we've made, like in Mossville, Louisiana. We made a north-south connection with Christine and Delma Bennett, and what's coming out of those 14, 16 smokestacks, the manufacturers, ends up here in the Arctic. So it's an opportunity to share and network and help each other as we are working to make meaningful change. And opportunities have come up because of these networks, both through Coming Clean and with Environmental Justice Health Alliance. And, my appointment with the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, I was invited by key people that were involved from the beginning, including Dr. Cecilia Martinez, who called me directly to invite me, but also our friends like Richard Moore and Michelle Roberts and others have talked about our issues in DC, and that have presented opportunities, not only for us, but to help each other, because, as we work together to make these broken and outdated chemical laws and polluters accountable, when we work together, that is when collaboratively things change. Change is slow, however, it can be done, and we are dedicated, and to our mission of that everyone has a right to clean air, clean water, and toxic-free food.
Sure. Well, I feel optimistic that with this new administration, we do have the opportunity for transformative change that means something and that will bring health and justice and human rights to people on the ground that have suffered for so long. and I don't mean just the past 4 years, but I mean for decades, exposed to toxic chemicals that harm communities, that infringe on the health of present as well as future generations. So I'm optimistic that we can achieve some of those changes. I'm optimistic that we can transform the system of law that we have, that we know is not protective, that we can hold industrial and military polluters accountable, that we can truly achieve environmental justice for the communities that we stand in solidarity with all over the country and also around the world, because we're involved in the International Pollutants Elimination Network. And we really hope that the work that we do here also lifts up communities faced with similar injustices throughout the world. And then I would also just say, I think the work of ACAT is uniquely situated because of our place in the North. And Vi talked about how the North and the Arctic is a hemispheric sink for these chemical contaminants from all over the world. And I think the connections that we have made over so many years with Coming Clean friends and fence line communities, because really the Arctic is the ultimate fence line. And so I have confidence that those friendships and those relationships that we've built are strong, and that they will lead us to transformative change. I really do believe that. And I think sometimes we feel here in Alaska that we're somewhat isolated, but Coming Clean makes us feel that we're part of a family, that we're part of a family that cares, supports, and stands together to create this change, because it's going to take all of us.
And to go before the weed jack, and they're the people that I'm part of the work group I've gotten to know through Coming Clean and EJHA. And these are people on the ground doing the work on the ground to make meaningful change. And who knew that this is the first time ever I felt that we were being heard. And because we have had so many broken promises. I don't know how many times I met with EPA, the State Department, Army Corps of Engineer, who's responsible for the cleanup and site characterization, and Agency for Toxic Substances Disease Registry, who are tasked to do health assessments in some of the most vulnerable communities throughout the nation. And it's very disheartening to learn that these federal agencies, like with ATSDR, who did a health assessment, our tribe petitioned them to do a health assessment. And it basically let the polluter off the hook. And, there's so much work to be done. And in the meantime, communities like mine and throughout the nation, people of color, low income, Latino, fence line communities, people whose lives are in danger, to hear that if there's ever explosion at a chemical plant or a refinery, that the most vulnerable within where these industries and chemical plants are built, around some of the most disenfranchised, the most poor people of color communities, that's why we are doing what we do. Like for me, help is not coming fast enough for my generation. I do this work for my children and my grandchildren, who have a human right to food and subsistence, human right to health, their basic human right, their dignity to continue to live as Sivora, you big people, with the utmost respect for our lands and waters, and that have sustained our people for centuries. We have a right to live and pass on our languages and our culture and traditions. But these toxic chemicals can affect our children's ability to learn. You know, how can we pass on our languages, our creation stories, and our way of life and traditions, and how to predict the weather? You know, the Bering Sea can be very unforgiving, you know, but with climate change and global warming, weather patterns and climate is changing so fast, knowledge that it passed on for centuries is not working anymore.
Well, I'd just like to point out really that so many of our communities are in imminent danger. And here in the north, in the Arctic, we're really faced with the fact that the climate is warming 3 times faster than the rest of the planet. And a lot of people don't realize that climate warming and chemicals production and use and plastics production and use are all interconnected. And in fact, the importance of the chemical industry and plastics industry toward climate warming, I think, is not fully appreciated. So in the next 20 years, we have to not only address climate change head on and stop the production and use of chemicals that contribute to climate warming, but we have to hold the fossil fuel industry as well as the chemical industry, which is really one and the same, accountable, and to hold them not only accountable, but get justice for the damage that they've done. I think we're all seeking a just transition toward that future that is safe and healthy for everyone. And we do have particular concerns about protecting the health of future generations because these chemicals have multi-generational effects. And I think we are aware of that. So we have to not only be mindful of what we're doing to benefit our communities now, but looking down several generations.
You know, my ancestors and our elders gone before us, you know, in our culture, we honor our elders and our children. And there used to be 10,000 of us in 32 communities on my island. 10,000, and some of our elders think up to 20,000 of us. And now we have 2 communities left. Gamble has about 800 people, and where I'm from in Savunga, we have about 900 people. This is a result of Western contact, the epidemics, and the influx from whalers and archaeologists and colonizers and settlers who came to our communities, the missionaries, you know, who almost wiped us out. And, you know, my immediate family were one of the very few original Sivoka Island residents. 99.9% of our people have ties to Siberia. We have relatives over there who speak the same dialect and same way of life. But during the Cold War, our ties were cut. But because of our people and communities were so, because of all the, what we faced, the influx from Western contact, the diseases that were brought on, all the traumas our people experienced, we almost got wiped out. However, we're still here. And I never heard of environmental racism. I never heard of environmental violence. And these are very real challenges we are fighting today. Environmental racism. you know, to hear from our leadership that, you know, that concerns of how the Bering Sea, which is our farm, our elders called the Bering Sea our farm. My people continue to hunt bowhead whale, walrus, and seals, 4 species of seal. We had some of the most rare seabird migration pattern come through our island. So many species of fish. I mean, 90% of our food comes from the ocean and our lands and waters, a way of life that we have lived for centuries. And it is so important that we continue to protect what have our way of life that I would like to pass on to my grandson, you know, and I would like to see our people thrive as our Creator intended, taking only what we need. We have been stewards of our lands and waters, protecting the most sacred, so that my being as a Yupi grandmother can continue what our ancestors and our elders and those gone before us who helped to be, so that I can do this work. I now know that this is where I'm supposed to be. I have to be at my utmost best. Where I come from humble beginnings and humble people, but I now know, because of the environmental racism, environmental violence, where we're being contaminated without our consent, whether it's from PCBs, pesticides, heavy metals, solvents that the military abandoned and buried on our island, or my grandson who has a higher body burden of flame retardants in his small developing body than an adult, that the you know, these industries need to be held accountable. You know, our women's ability to conceive, our men's ability to, you know, our reproductive systems can be altered and changed from these chemicals that we bring into our homes, not knowing that industries who only test a handful of these toxic chemicals that are driven by greed over human health and profits. To me, that is so unethical. And to learn that, you know, I want my grandchildren to continue to know the history of my people, to learn the language, to continue to eat the nakabik that our farm, the Bering Sea, provides for my family, even though I live here. I have brothers that live there, and that, you know, we have to be fierce advocates and warriors for our people, for my grandson. You know, I have a 5-month-old granddaughter, and my eldest are living in Shagaluk. My oldest granddaughter, I just got her a fishing pole, and she learned how to trap and how to cut up fish and help her Appa, her grandfather, set a net. And she loves living there, even though she was born here, and learning the language, you know, our human right to live the way our Creator intended, with no, you know, it's unfortunate. We have to learn how to read, you know, what we buy and bring into our homes. You know, these broken environmental and chemical laws. We have to learn how to protect the health and well-being of ourselves, our bodies, but our children. it's been difficult to hold polluters accountable. It's going to take an act of Congress. Like regulatory agencies there needs to be investigations into why they're not doing, what they're supposed to do, protect the most vulnerable. They're not doing what they're charged. They're issuing permits. I would like to see us work at the national and international level to strengthen chemical and environmental laws that are so broken. And the divide is only getting larger. To hear of Juan Perez talk about how railroad industry, basically, they now park on the railroad system next to his community, whereas they can't drive out of the community. All the pollution and maybe the toxic chemicals that these trains are transporting. These rail systems have become parking lots, as he called it. And that if there's ever an explosion, they're going to have so many lives lost, and because there's a need for, as Pam mentioned, a just transition away from these fossil fuel industries and away from, we need renewable energy. Alaska has so much potential. And only 12% of my people work. 12% there's no jobs, and average income is 20,000. And one of the things that I heard from our leadership, when there is a natural disaster in the lower 48, they get immediate aid. And we have never gotten any aid. When these shipping lanes, because the ice is not melting, there's more shipping and tourism coming through our island. There's a big concern about how these trawlers are coming and they are disturbing the bottom of the ocean. And everything has a connection as it goes up the food chain. And this is resulting in food security issues. It's not that the walrus or the seal numbers are declining. It's the ice. They are also ice dependent. And this is resulting in low walrus harvest, seal walrus harvests. That is making, which is our food during our long winters. And when there's crashes in commercial fishing industries, those fishermen get aid, monetary aid. But when we have low walrus harvest, our freezers are empty. We have no food during the long winter. We don't get aid. Yes, we're a community of maybe 2,000. However, what is wrong with this picture? There's no equality. So that's what I'd like to see a future for my grandson to continue living as a Inupiaq, Sivokak, Yupik. We're getting ready to go have a native food dinner and go Eskimo dancing this evening. I'm really looking forward to it. And my grandson loves to hear Eskimo dancing, and his dad, my son, is a dancer and drummer. This is what we do we have family gatherings even here to help lift up our spirits. It's been very challenging. However, we still get together. We're close knit. It's an opportunity to talk in our language and share laughter and dance and eat. And